We've known that leftists and leftism have been strongly correlated to having mental illnesses for quite some time. But 2025 is the year that we are realizing the autism to trans pipeline is real. Quite a few studies are showing that trans and gender diverse people are 3 to 6 times more likely to be autistic. Research also suggests that this relationship is bi-directional, where the rate of autism in transgender individuals is 6 to 26% compared to 1.8% prevalence in the general population. That's wild. So why is this happening? How do we stop it? Welcome to another LGBT damage control. So why is this happening? So let's look at all the common traits between the two, even though we know that correlation isn't necessarily causation. Autism and trans. Number one, lower rates of empathy. Some studies have found, on average, lower self-reported rates of empathy among both trans people, or quote, trans people, and autistic individuals. Number two, pattern recognition. Both types of individuals have a greater ability to recognize patterns. Sometimes it's referred to systematizing, whatever. I mean, you think that they would be able to like recognize the patterns, like the red flag patterns in their own communities, but like that's probably a whole other video. I mean, you know, like the inability to see both sides of a debate, childlike behavior.
Trans gay men!
Wait, do that again? What was that?
We're shouting that we were trans gay men because we are.
Holier than thou attitudes, and of course, the septum piercing. But we know introspection is not one of their strong suits, so let's continue. Number three, social and emotional understanding. Many autistic people struggle with understanding their own internal sense of being or existing in the world. And often this can lead to them thinking that they are trans, because that's kind of also something that trans people struggle with, right? The way that they exist in the world. But the difference here is that autistic people are just generally uncomfortable with themselves and their place in the world rather than their bodies. This is something that they commonly misconstrue. Number four, both trans and autistic people tend to struggle with feeling socially isolated within their peer groups because of their conditions. And because of this, this might lead one to think that they're the other and vice versa. And when I tell you that there are literally hundreds of thousands of videos of kids on TikTok and such doing this and thinking this, I'm not kidding.
While I do think the self-diagnosis is necessary for a lot of people, especially marginalized people, I also think that a lot of you are not doing your due diligence to make sure that you are actually correctly self-diagnosing. Unfortunately, I'm seeing a lot of people self-diagnosing just by watching YouTube videos or TikTok or listening to their friends' lived experience, but that's not enough.
Number five, non-conformity. Both types tend to be more open about their gender identity because they are less reliant on social norms. Again, being outside of mainstream social expectations is a shared trait. Now, put all this together, right? The nonconformity, the feeling isolated, the low emotional understanding, and throw in the fact that trans can literally mean anything these days.
You can still identify as trans even if you don't medically transition.
By the way, there are not any rules when it comes to your identity. You can do whatever you want. You can refer to yourself as a tree and go by gleep gloop.
Sprinkle in the media trying to make autism a good thing. This is all a recipe for absolute disaster, as we've seen. And a disaster it has been. Now, President Trump and RFK are looking into a ton of health and food issues that also might be part of this all. New York City is changing their water, and since I live here 6 months out of the year, it is something that is directly affecting me, not necessarily because of the autism stuff, but because of a bypass tunnel. New York City is changing a few things. And although it is the best tasting water, everybody knows that if you are living in New York City, it is also quite harsh on your skin and hair. So I decided to look into something that I use every single day, my shower. Hopefully everybody showers every day. I recently switched to the Athena filtered shower head, and the difference has been absolutely insane. I don't know if you can see my skin. The last few weeks, it's been rough. It's much better this week. Most people don't actually realize that tap water is treated with chlorine and can carry trace heavy metals from old pipes, which we know New York City is very old, and they can mess with your skin barrier. They can mess with your hair, causing dryness, irritation, brittleness, and even breakouts. Whenever I visit my mom in Florida, she actually has a water softener and a filtered shower head, which whenever I go there, my skin is always so much more vibrant whenever I'm in Florida in general. So I wanted that here in New York City. And thank God Athena sponsored this video because I knew you guys would absolutely love it. Athena's multi-stage filtration system removes up to 98% of chlorine and neutralizes heavy metals, leaving you with clean, gentle water that actually helps your skin and hair heal. It also installs in less than 3 minutes. One of my friends who is not a plumber, he's like a little bit of a handyman though, did it for me. Just screw it on and you're done. If you've been struggling with dryness, dullness, or irritation, this is the product for you. I'm obsessed with the Athena shower head. It also looks looks really pretty. It makes my apartment look like way more expensive than it actually is. Use promo code Ariel for 20% off. You can click the link in the description or use the QR code on screen. Go and grab yours today. Make sure you support brands that support our morals and this channel. Now, back to the video.
And what's going on today? Why are we here?
Well, we're here to testify against HB 251312, easily the worst bill that any state has ever proposed in the history of our country. And what it does is it basically defines, what is it called, misgendering and dead naming as a form of coercive control, and will steal your child if you refuse to allow them to trans. And it also has a clause in it that says if you don't affirm somebody's delusion, then the state comes after you. So, and as an autistic person who is well aware that this transgender ideology is going after my people is just heartbreaking and crushing. In fact, just last night, I saw a post of a woman whose breast had been cut off who was autistic, and it filled me with sadness and rage. And now they're trying to pass a bill that will steal autistic children. I'd say half the victims are autistic, and it will steal autistic children.
More and more and more detransition stories. I featured a ton of them on this channel over the past few years, even though one study is claiming that trans patients, or detrans patients I should say, that don't like their transition and are detransitioning are just doing so because of internalized homophobia, or transphobia I should say, internalized transphobia. You don't hate the media enough. This is actually a fantastic article by Maya, who is a detrans woman, but instead of just reading parts 2, I wanted you to hear it straight from her mouth.
Hi. My name is Maya Poet. I'm 26 years old, and from the ages of 12 to 24, I was convinced that I was born in the wrong body. My story started in 2011 with the iPad I got for my 12th birthday. Algorithms quickly pulled me into hours of content about gender transition procedures, and by 2012, trans became an obsession that would consume the next 12 years of my life. I no longer believe that I was born in the wrong body, and for the last 2 years, I've been trying to understand what happened to me and how I finally came to terms with my biological sex. Because I was an early adolescent adopter of a transgender identity, and because I share a cognitive profile similar to many young people who present with gender dysphoria today, I believe the knowledge I've gleaned from my life in transition and detransition may be useful for those seeking to better understand the overlap between autism and gender dysphoria. So, to understand how I got here, you have to understand how my mind worked as a kid. In hindsight, I should have been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, but like many girls, I was too precocious and verbal to get the diagnosis. I was known as the quirky child who got along better with adults than with other kids. I had lifelong hyperfixations on niche medical conditions. At 8, I was obsessed with acromegaly, a condition of extreme and asymmetric growth afflicting the world's tallest people, which is caused by a rare pituitary tumor. And at 10, it was about the human genome, and by middle school, I began watching videos of gastric bypass operations for fun and studying the DSM to categorize myself and others so I could make sense of a world that felt confusing, overwhelming, and simultaneously fascinating. Where my adolescent peers sought popularity through conformity, I struggled to intuit social norms and instead craved conceptual frameworks. So after I got that iPad, my tendency towards hyperfixation went into overdrive. At 18, I fully socially transitioned. By 20, I was living in the Middle East, in Israel, and passing as a guy by continuing to bind my breasts. And it took waking up to 2 sets of air raid sirens, first in May of 2021, and then on October 7th, 2023, and having to calculate whether I had enough time to both bind my breasts so I could pass as a man and to make it into a bomb shelter, that I began to confront the reality of my own embodiment. Real war made the internal war I had waged against my body impossible to maintain, and I realized that my healthy female body was not a pathology to fight or to fix, but that it was my only vehicle for survival. That reckoning catalyzed my detransition. Not only did I have to learn how to accept myself after the most valuable years of my identity development were subverted by a harmful lie, but I still, to this day, have to learn how to live with a permanent damage and deformity to my breasts, to my muscles, and my ribcage from the years of breast binding, which happened while I was actively growing. I have had to relearn how to breathe. I have now realized that my valiant but misguided attempt to understand myself as an adolescent has caused me new pain, which in hindsight may have been totally avoidable if I had just had the right explanation for why I felt so different from other girls and for why I was so chronically at odds with my body. Because what I, as a 12-year-old, had conceptualized as gender dysphoria was at its root autistic disembodiment, a deep neurological and sensory disconnection from my body.
And because of all of this nonsense, we have started to see some good changes, some actual progress. Some children's hospitals across the country and abroad are ending gender-affirming care for minors. The NHS is actually testing all trans kids for autism, which is great. I actually think it's also important to note that another thing trans and autism have in common is the extremely common misdiagnosis of said being trans or autistic. The two main reasons for this, in my opinion, are number one, internet hype, wanting to feel included, wanting to feel like you're a part of something bigger, people understanding you, or thinking that people are understanding you. You know, needing something to understand yourself and have something to pinpoint it, right? And say, okay, this is the reason why I am this way, because I'm autistic or trans, right? And even more mainstream, the fact that autism or autistic diagnosis has become the epitome of another absolutely meaningless intersectional identity is definitely also a part of it. Anyone can self-diagnose as autistic, and we see people doing this over and over on TikTok and Instagram and every other social networking site. You're valid, you're safe, nobody can question you. And guess what happens when you're surrounded by yes-thems? Yes-thems. I'm gonna coin that term, yes-thems. Young adults' personalities are changing with conscientiousness in free fall. Look at the drop in conscientiousness and the rise of neuroticism. Also look at the drop in agreeableness, or like the willingness to agree to disagree, I guess. So now we're getting even more mental illness, and this quite literally can become a forever cycle. And seeing as though society, at least in Western countries, is already like incredibly overdiagnosed and overtreated, this will likely lead to even more issues.
So what's your take?
We have over-therapized ourselves as a society.
100% agree.
In the past decade or so, it has become like a mission for our generation to be like, find out what's wrong with you, get to the bottom of it, heal it, or else.
I actually think while this is a great premise, the whole idea of, healing your trauma, I just don't think that that's what actually is happening. Instead, we tend to see a ton of more entitlement. And like we spoke about in this video, healing yourself has forever led to false diagnoses or over-diagnoses, which tends to lead to people taking pills that they don't actually need, getting surgeries that they definitely don't need. And more often than not, this actually acts as a band-aid, which is actually just covering up the issue on the surface. No actual healing has taken place. And even if some people go to therapy, most of them don't actually go through any healing, because most therapists are just simply gender affirming or mental illness affirming. Many people are not doing that, deep, dark, scary spiritual work that they have to do. In the spiritual community, we call that shadow work. I actually came across this video the other day that speaks of the real reason that therapy today might be the way it is, and compares it to another psychologist that most of us haven't even heard of. I know I haven't. Listen to this.
What if the mental health crisis exists because we followed the wrong guy? In modern psychology, there were two major voices, Freud and Adler. Guess which one we built an entire industry around? In Freud's model, everything's about your childhood, your parents, your trauma. You're broken because of what happened to you, and healing means going back and reliving every moment. Adler, he didn't ignore the past, but he said it's not the main thing. What really matters, your beliefs, your goals, your sense of meaning. He believed healing came from taking responsibility, creating connection, and building purpose in the now. But we didn't follow Adler, we followed Freud. Because Freud's model made it easy to build a business around therapy that keeps you talking year after year. It feels like healing, but nothing actually changes. You explain your patterns, you analyze your wounds, but you stay stuck. What we need is Adler's model. We need to reprogram your subconscious with forward-focused beliefs, not to stay stuck in the past.
As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you are new here, and I know a ton of you guys are watching my videos but haven't yet subscribed, make sure to go and do that now. I have a ton of amazing content coming up. Make sure to go and check out our sponsor, Afina. My face is feeling so much more soft and much like these leftist idiots that we review in almost every video. Other than that, I will see you guys back here in a few days with a brand new video. Until then, I love you, love yourselves. Keep calling out the bullshit.